الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Normally, mashallah, my phone is exceptionally quiet at this time, and now I'm getting continuous phone calls, even though I've put no notifications, so I'm not sure how this is working. Anyway, we'll just have to break through the live connection every now and then. Acha. Today, alhamdulillah, we're gathered. Obviously, eventually we will fill our bellies, but that's not the real reason we're gathered here today. It's always good to prioritize and clear one's mind and put oneself in focus. It is one of the last few nights of this year's of Ramadan. And obviously, we're not sure whether we will take benefit from another day, never mind another month. So we should take benefit from these days, both in terms of as an act of ibadah, but also as an opportunity to learn. Unfortunately, we Muslims are also caught up in the fast life that exists outside of us, whether it's home life, family life, marriage, children, work, things going on in the extended family, politics, something going on in the street, earnings. There is always something which preoccupies our minds. And unfortunately, what it does do when it preoccupies our minds, it distracts us from the bigger scheme of things. And the biggest schemes of things, obviously, is our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is of importance that we have a strong bond, a strong relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as we return back to Him. And that relationship is based upon what we gain in this life. So it's important that we gain that link. Now, what I will do, inshallah ta'ala, G, feel free to go. What I will do is, sort of the program is split up in terms of, the program is split up. The program is split up first, inshallah, that we're going to have a short 20, 25 minute, 30 minute lecture on a particular topic. And then we will be able to open up for questions. And then after that, there will be time for private ibadah. Before then, Maghrib Salah. And then obviously we can break fast. One of the things that we are taught, or rather two of the things that we're taught, is hope and fear. And like patience and gratitude are on the flip side of each other, meaning when things are good, we should be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when things are bad, we should be patient with whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put us in. So we are either in one state or the other state. We are either in the state of gratitude or we should be in the state of patience. Well, similarly, with when it comes to hope and fear, there will be times, obviously, where we can be hopeful when things are potentially good coming up. And if things potentially good are coming up, we have hope. We have aspirations. We are happy as to what's going to happen, or we see the light at the end of the tunnel. But there is the other side of it, and the other side of it, obviously, is fear. And the fear is... Okay, we'll try that now. But that should be better now, I think, because I can pick it up. Just find out if it's picking up. It's a little bit further away from my mouth. Is it clearer now? Yeah? So, well, I think because we can hear it here, I'm sure the same system. So if we have there the balance between hope and fear, then as I was saying, that when there are times where we are optimistic, when something good is on the horizons, or there's a potential for happiness coming, we live in hope. That, oh, this may happen, that might happen, this is going to happen. But similarly, when the dark clouds gather, when things become a little bit difficult, then unfortunately, we then have a state of fear. Now, these two things are feelings that humans feel, and these are things which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has accepted and in fact commended. We find, for instance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, فَلَا يَأْمَنُ مَكْرَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا الْقَوْمُ الْخَاسِرُونَ. So do not feel content from the planning which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes except the losing people. Meaning when we get over optimistic, when things are happening good in our life because we think we are the orchestrator of that, or we have orchestrated it, we have manufactured it, then we become over optimistic. Everything is happening exactly how we want it to happen. And what we do then is we forget about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the job that I was applying for, the marriage that was going to happen, or the house that I was going to buy, all these things are happening one after the other. It's like we're on a lucky streak. So we become over optimistic. And as a result, we disconnect from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us. He says, no one should feel safe from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's planning, or rather the only people who do feel safe from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's planning are the qawmul khasirun. Similarly, in another ayat, he says, إِنَّهُ لَا يَيْأَسُ مِنْ رَوْحِ اللَّهِ إِلَّا الْقَوْمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. And the flip side of it, which is, and do not lose hope from the mercy of Allah except the ungrateful or disbelieving people. So on the other side is, sometimes we fall into despair. We lose a loved one. And when we lose a loved one, we become very upset. In fact, we become so depressed, and so the situation becomes so bleak that we think there's no way out of this. So all we think about is the negativity. All we think about, this is just going to get worse, and nothing is going to happen, and there's going to be no outlet for this. There's going to be no light on the horizon. There's going to be no silver lining behind the clouds. Everything is going to be bad. So we become in a spiral of depression, in a spiral of loss, and a spiral of giving up. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that this is not a sign of a believer. In fact, He mentions that the only people, those who give up hope, are those people who are al-qawmul kafirun, are disbelieving people, because they don't believe in Allah. They don't believe that He can change things. So as we see, this balance between hope and fear all involves our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Becoming too hopeful, becoming over optimistic, thinking that everything is happening because of our own actions, our intellect, our money, our situation, then as a result we become independent from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Similarly, when a difficult situation arises, we also break our connection from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we start to dwindle and fall into a state of despair. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in another ayat, يَوْمَ تَبْيَدُّ وُجُوهُ وَتَسْوَدُّ وُجُوهُ. On that day, some faces will be whitened and some faces will be darkened. So here we see again the split that will occur. That some people will be content, and some people will be happy, and some people will reach sadness. إِنَّ رَبَّكَ لَسَرِيعُ الْعِقَابِ. Indeed, your Rabb is most swift in taking punishment. وَإِنَّهُ لَغَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. But He's also most forgiving and most merciful. So we're seeing this balance, this dichotomy which exists, and obviously it's not a kind of a discrete dichotomy. It will be like a spectrum in which we find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warning people that He will punish them if they do wrong, but He's also offering forgiveness and mercy. But it all involves the link with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Furthermore, we find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, إِنَّ الْأَبْرَارَ لَفِي نَعِيمٍ, that the pious will be in na'im, in bliss, in contentment. But what is the flip side? What about the others? وَإِنَّ الْفُجَّارَ لَفِي جَحِيمٍ. And as for the fujjar, the ones who commit sin without stopping, the ones who are perpetual on minor sins, the ones who commit major sins and do not ask for forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then they will be in the fire. And obviously here, if we take the fujjar in the greatest level of sin, which is kufr or shirk, then they will be in there for eternity. And finally, another verse I can share with you before we then start narrating some hadith to you. There is another verse which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, فَأَمَّا مَنْ ثَقُلَتْ مَوَازِينُهُ فَهُوَ فِي عِيشَةٍ رَاضِيَةٍ. As for that person whose scales, whose pan, and these are like the old school scales where you have two pans on either side. We see them at the Old Bailey, the Lady of Justice holding them in her hand in order to explain that justice will get done. So if your scale, if your pan is heavy, then that person is in عِيشَةٍ رَاضِيَةٍ, in a very pleasing life. And as for that who has his scales lightened, for ummuhu hawiya, then his mother, meaning his abode, will be the fire, yani Jahannam. So here we see these opposites. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we've already mentioned, will keep these opposites there. And the real rationale behind these opposites is to keep us upon Siratul Mustaqim. We are to avoid both extremities. We are to avoid both extremes. We're supposed to progress within those. So when we become too optimistic, when we get too carried away, we should kind of bring ourselves down a little bit, remind ourselves of the sins we've committed, remind ourselves of the bad things that we do. So we slowly come down a little bit. But if we start to fall and become negative, if we start to become too bleak that, oh, I'm doomed, it's over for me, then we should try to remember, if we can't remember any of our own good deeds, we should remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is forgiving and He is merciful. Hadith Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu narrates, in which he says, Anna Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam قال لو يعلم المؤمن ما عند الله من العقوبة ما تمع بجنة أحد. If a believer knew what is in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from punishment and harm, then he would not have, nobody would have actually any hope of his Jannah. وَلَوْ يَعْلَمُ الْكَافِرُ مَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ مِنَ الرَّحْمَةِ مَا قَنِتَ مِنْ جَنَّةِ أَحَدٌ. And if the kafir knew how much mercy resides with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then he also would not give hope from receiving Jannah. So we see again the balance which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is striking, which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is mentioning. وعن أبي سعيد الخدري رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إذا وضعت الجنازة واحتملها الناس أو الرجال على أعناقهم. So when the dead body is placed in front of the people at the funeral, and the people or the men carry them on their shoulders, فإن كانت صالحة. Now if this person was a pious person, the soul was of piety, the soul through the body. So remember, the body is the thing which commits the acts of worship. So we're fasting, but the soul benefits from it. Even though our body is harmed because of it, we feel hungry, we feel thirsty, we feel tired, but the soul benefits from it. But there's other things which we will gain through the body. Eating things which aren't good for us, we enjoy it a lot more. Engaging in activities which gives us a sort of excitement to our body, which Allah SWT has made impermissible. The consumption of alcoholic beverages, taking drugs, things of that nature, which gives us a buzz, which gives us a high, but it harms the soul. So some things can benefit the body, but harm the soul, or one perceives it's benefiting the body, and some things can actually harm the body, but give benefit to the soul. So it's the soul which is key, because once we've passed away, it's the soul which will remain. So when these people pick up this funeral on their shoulders, and they're carrying this corpse now to the grave, and if this person was a pious person, then the soul will speak from the body. It will say, Qaddimuni, quickly, take me faster. Okay, take me faster. Meaning, because, the world was of harm for me. It was of no benefit to me. I did not enjoy the world. I obviously had to stay in the world. I had to fulfill my responsibilities. I was a father, or I was a mother, or whatever, and I fulfilled my roles. Now, obviously, I want to move on and leave this world behind me. However, what about the flip side of this? وَإِنْ كَانَتْ غَيْرَ صَالِحَةً. If the person was not a pious person, this person was a bad person, then this person will, or the soul will reply within his body, Ya waylaha, oh woe to it. Aina tadhhabuna biha. Where are you taking it? I was happy in this world. Yasma'u sawtaha kulla shay. All things can hear the sound of this soul within the body, illa al-insan, except the human. The human won't be able to hear it. وَلَوْ سَمِعَهُ صَائِقًا. And if the person was to hear, then he would collapse and die. So we see an example here of the person realizing whilst he was alive the true purpose of this dunya. And even though this dunya we see sometimes as a pleasurable place, as a place where we enjoy, it is not something we should aim to make pleasurable. If it becomes pleasurable, obviously when good things happen to us, where glad tidings come to us, where a child is born in the family, or a marriage takes place, or some good news comes to us, we succeed something in life, or we achieve a job that we wanted to get, or we earn some money which can help us, then we naturally become happy. There's no harm in that. That's natural for us to show our gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to run to praise Him for that. But though generally this person is aware that this world is a finite place. This world is a means to an end. This world is only something he's traveling through. It's not something that he's going to stay in for eternity. So yes, he should invest into it, but invest only that time that he needs. So for instance, when we were coming to the madrasa today, we didn't bring everything with us. We didn't bring our sleeping bags or our toothpaste or toothbrush or all those things. Why? Because we knew that we're only here for a short while. Our food had already been catered for, so we knew that we were already here for a short while. So all we needed was maybe a coat if we were walking here, maybe even not a coat if we were coming in a car, because we knew that we were just going to jump in the car from outside the house and then make it our way to the madrasa, jump out of the car, so I don't even need a coat. I'll just walk into the madrasa, sit there, listen to the bayan, do what I need to do, eat, and then come back home. We've not brought our suhoor with us. Why? Because we had no intention to make sahri here. So you see, when we know when we're going somewhere for a short time, then we plan for that. Unfortunately, when we're sent to the earth, we think we're going to live here for eternity. So we care what people think about us. We care how that person looks at us, whether he laughs at us or he doesn't laugh at us, because we think our reputation is the be-all and end-all, because we think we're going to live here forever, so we think we should get respect here. Similarly, we think we're going to live forever, so we think we've got to keep earning and earning and earning and earning. But there has never been a person who has ended up without money in his pocket when he's passed away. Reason being is because he thinks he's going to live to spend it tomorrow, or he thinks he's going to live to spend it the next week, and what so happens instead is that he dies before that. So there's many a time where this person is living in this scenario. So it's about a realization that we need to bring about in ourselves. And the realization that we're trying to bring about is that what is it that I am trying to achieve from this world? What is the success that I can get from this world? What can I do to get there? And it's about striving and working hard. But today's topic has particularly been about hope and fear. And as a result, the hope that we must have whenever things are getting us down. This is why, unfortunately, now you hear many people that are suffering from depression, and many people that are suffering from loneliness, and many people that are suffering from what you would consider to be mind illnesses that they did not suffer from before, yet the times were a lot harder. I'm sure many of us can remember the times when our mothers were raising us. You know, there was no such thing as disposable nappies. There was no central heating. They used to burn coal. They used to have carpet in only one room. You know, it was a very, very simple life. Nobody had a phone. There was only one or two houses with phones in them. A car, there was only one or two cars. Letters, yeah. Only one or two people could write. Education was very bleak. Yet, you know, because there was a little bit of a fikr of deen, and there was a little bit of a connection to deen, and there was a lack of connection with the dunya, there was a lack of connection with how big is my house, how fancy are my clothes, how fantastic are my children doing, how do I compare to my brother, how do I compare to my sister, how do I compare to my next door neighbor. There was no care of that nature because people had nothing, and when you have nothing, you don't compare. It's only when you get something that you start to compare, or you think you're achieving something in life. So life was a lot simple, and as a result, even though there were hard times, men used to work 12, 14-hour shifts, 7 days a week, so the times were a lot harder. Similarly, women used to have a very, very hard life. Nowadays, you can buy chapati, you can buy your salan, you can, you know, you don't have to cook anything in the house. Life has been made so simple, but yet you find, unfortunately, depression, mental instability, sadness, loss of hope, existing within all communities, but it's also reached the Muslim community. Yet we knew, you know, I remind myself first and remind the listeners as well, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّهُ لَا يَيْأَسُ مِنْ رُوحِ اللَّهِ إِلَّا الْقَوْمُ الْكَافِرُونَ, that nobody loses hope in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala except the disbelieving people. So how is it that we've reached a point? So when a woman does not have a child, she becomes depressed. She feels sad, as though she has earned the right to be a mother, as though she deserves the right to be a mother. Similarly, when a man or woman or man does not get married, he feels upset, he feels down that I have a right to marry. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing wrong to me for not allowing me to do something like that. And whether it's work or whether it's anything else for that matter, we unfortunately lose hope and we lose that faith that we're supposed to have. And that's what faith means. Faith means iman, to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to believe in His plan, to believe that He has something written for you, which is taqdeer, to accept that, to live within that, to be always hopeful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but not to allow that person's hope to misguide him until eventually he becomes one who has completely lost fear of Allah. And sadly, you hear that as well, where numerous people will say, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ghafoor, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Rahim. So whether I do good deeds or don't do good deeds, it does not matter. That's a completely wrong attitude to take. This is again the other ayat that I recited to you. فَلَا يَأْمَنُ مَكْرَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا الْقَوْمُ الْخَاسِرُونَ. And no one feels safe from the planning of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala except the losing people. So as a result, we need to keep those two balanced, inshallah. Final hadith that I will share with you. وعن ابن مسعود رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الجنة أقرب إلى أحدكم من شراك نعله والنار مثل ذلك. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, and this hadith is recorded in Bukhari, that the Jannat is closer to you than your shoelace, and the fire is also similar as close. Now, when we look at the shoelace, you know, the shoelace is as close as things can be to us. It's only an arm's reach away. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is mentioning here that Jannat is that close to you, and Jahannam is that close to you. Now, when we hear this and we think, well, okay, you know, really, and we sort of think about it and we think, well, I haven't died yet, I haven't died yet, I haven't died yet, I haven't died yet, so Jannat wasn't that close to me. If it was that close to me, then I would have, when someone says, oh, somebody's arriving, oh, he's close, then you expect it to happen in the next 5-10 minutes. You don't expect it to not happen. But this is the same kind of mindset that we take to say that I'll only put my seatbelt on when I'm involved in a crash. The problem you have is that you're not going to get no text message before you're going to have a crash. So it's the kind of same mindset that, oh, I've never had a crash before. Yeah, but it only takes one crash for you to have a crash. So it's kind of like you're waiting for that one situation. So Jannat and Jahannam is that close to us. So whilst we are in this month of Ramadan, whilst we are engaging, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has helped us, He's helped us because we get distracted. So He's taken our distractions away from us. He's taken food away from us, He's taken water away from us, and He's taken other adult activities away from us, so that our focus is solely on Him. Is that not miraculous that we see our masajids full? We, outside of Ramadan, struggle to avoid haram food. In Ramadan, we avoid halal food. Okay, so is that not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy? So what He does is, we are supposed to be doing this anyway, throughout our lives, but unfortunately, as I mentioned when I started today's lecture, was that our life has become so busy, or rather, we have made our life busy, and by making our life busy, we're just caught up in things. There's always something going on, some wedding to prepare for, some ta'ziyah to attend, some reason to go to Pakistan, some reason to go to here, go there. There's always something going on, which is not allowing us to take stock of our lives, which is not allowing us to sit quietly in a room and think, am I happy where I am, as a 30-year-old, as a 40-year-old, as a 50-year-old, as a 60-year-old? Am I happy that if my soul was taken today, would I be content? And that's the question we've got to be regularly asking ourselves, because we don't know when that shoelace is going to snap. We know it's close, but we don't know which particular moment it's going to happen. So when we take stock and we reflect, then due to that reflection, our actions change. And this is why Ramadan comes. So we have now 10, 11, whatever, 12 days left of Ramadan. I've lost count. It feels like that. We've got a few days, several days, 10 days, 11 according to some, left of Ramadan. And yes, we might be counting down. Yes, we might be buying our Eid clothes. Yes, we might be sort of prepping where we're going to go for Eid and after Eid. But what we're doing is we're taking our eye off the goal of what we're trying to achieve. You notice also that being a monk or being a nun is shunned in Islam. It's impermissible in Islam. To take up a lifestyle that you live in a monastery or a nunnery is illegal in Islam. And yet, what we find within the month of Ramadan, 10 days in which we do adopt solitude, in which we go into khalwa, in which we go into i'tikaf, where we are further dissociated from the outside world. So already in Ramadan, we are dissociated from the outside world. Then those 10 days, we are even more so dissociated, because now we are in the house of Allah. And being in the house of Allah, we are even restricted as to what we can and can't do. We can't have worldly talk. We can't do this. We can't do that. Similarly, there's very little you can do in a masjid. There's only bare walls and mushafs and maybe some kitabs. So you're restricted as to what you're going to do. So in that way, that gives us another time. And obviously the sisters will make i'tikaf in the area where they normally pray. And so gives you more time to now reflect. He reflects upon, you can reflect on so many things. What's my relationship like with my blood ties? Yes, my blood ties done something wrong with me. But, it comes in a hadith in which a Sahabi asked the Prophet ﷺ that, when someone does good to me, then I do good to them back. Is this, Ramaḍān, as we call it, is this keeping blood ties? And the Prophet ﷺ said, no, keeping blood ties is when that person breaks the blood tie, you remake the blood tie. That's keeping blood ties. So whenever he breaks it, you make it. Because adla badla, Ramaḍān is what everybody does. It's no different. He does something for you, so you do something for them. He invites you to his son's wedding, so you invite him to your son's wedding. He doesn't invite you to his daughter's wedding, you don't invite him to his daughter's wedding. So this is adla badla, Ramaḍān. This is not keeping blood ties. So this is a time, unfortunately you get people who break blood ties and then don't talk for years and years and years. It's a time to reform them, restructure them. Remember, these are ties which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made. This is not something that we made in our life. This is something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has instructed us to do. So we look at those. Have we wronged anybody? Have we done wrong to anybody? So that's the time to now quickly clear that slate, to go and ask forgiveness. Unfortunately, we do ask forgiveness, but it's very, as you say in our language, porta. It's very top. It's very kind of like mafmika, forgive me. And there's no real feeling behind it. There's no real seriousness behind it. And that should be more genuine, that the person actually goes and asks for forgiveness and explains why he's asking for forgiveness. I've done this to you, I've done that to you. Similarly, any accounts that we need to settle with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they need to be settled as well. Any salahs which are owed, anything else which is owed to us, that needs to be done. As I explained in Jummah Bayan yesterday now, that what happens is we become the society that we are in. So if the people that we are around lie, then naturally we will also lie. If people that we are around deceive, then naturally we will also deceive. If people around us kind of skank each other, then naturally we are also going to skank each other. So we become a product of the society that we are in. So now, unfortunately, some of us aren't strong people. Some are strong, and they can change the society that they're in. Their personality is like that, and they can stop people from doing wrong. For most of us, we can't do that. We just go with the flow. So for those people, isolating themselves is even more so important. Because naturally, if everyone's going to go in this direction and you're part of that group, then you're also going to go in the same direction as them. So it's important that that person takes stock. So Ramadan comes and Ramadan goes. As I said, we're now approaching our last 10, 11 days now. We need to take more benefit from them and bear the thoughts bear the ayats and the hadiths that I've shared with you today, which is that we live a balanced life. We're not extreme. As much as people may label us as extremists, we're not. We live a balanced life between hope and fear. And whenever the feelings of sadness are overwhelming, whenever the feelings of loss are overwhelming, whenever we think there's no way out, then we need to bring hope into our lives. So we readjust ourselves, we realign ourselves, we start to listen to hadith of the Prophet mentioning that this life is short, this life has no value, the hereafter is something we should be going for. So that gives us contentment. Who had a more difficult life than the Prophet ﷺ? He never saw his father. He was born never seeing his father. His mother passed away when he was a young child. And then he loses his grandfather. Then he's with his uncle. Then he buries his own children, his 2 sons and 2 daughters, he buries with his own hands. How much difficulty did he go? Did he ever lose hope? Did he live a life of constantly in fear? He was always optimistic. But he did not. But did he used to say? We have a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ used to stand in prayer. حَتَّى تَتَفَطَّرَ قَدَمَاهُ. So Aisha radiallahu anha asked him, that, why do you do this, O Messenger of Allah? All your past errors of judgment and your future errors of judgment have been forgiven. So he said, should I not be abdan shakura? Should I not be a grateful servant? Yes, I know. For us, if somebody gave us a ticket to Jannah, we'd stop doing neki amal. We'd stop praying. We'll stop praying, we'll stop fasting. We'll say, well, I've already got Jannah. Why am I fasting for? Why am I giving zakat for? Why am I doing this for? I've already got this. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had that guarantee. He gave Sahaba the guarantee. So you can imagine his situation. He was giving Sahaba the guarantee that you are entering into Jannah. So if he was able to give Sahaba the guarantee, then he knows his is already guaranteed. Yet, You will see him. Nobody could compete with him when it came to his acts of worship. Nobody could compete with him when it came to anything else in the dunya. So let's combine and live between hope and fear and succeed in our true goal to this life. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give all listening the ability and the tawfiq to act upon what is said. Ameen. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So what we'll do now is we'll open up for some questions, if there are any from the sister side, if you text it through. Obviously, I see familiar faces here, so these people normally ask me questions anyway. But if there's any questions from there, please send it across, and we'll tackle those, inshallah.
First one, when a non-Muslim gives you salam, as in the salam, how we amongst Muslims give salam, and you just give a direct reply in the sense you say salam wa rahmatullah. Rather than saying wa alaikum, you say salam wa rahmatullah.
It's not been recorded in any tradition, and I've not heard it being mentioned in the books of fiqh with regards to it. But it's a way that if you don't target it to the particular individual,
So
your intention is. But if there's nobody there, then it's a bit hit and miss. But if there's only this person, then you can just say and to you. Just reply back in English, and wa alaik.
But they know that the wa alaik is not specific to reply to salam.
Yes, but then that comes down to education, because they need to understand that this is just not a kind of greeting. This is actually you making dua for that person. You're supplicating for that person. So when you say Assalamu alaikum, you're saying Assalam one is Allah's name, and the other one is peace be upon you, or salam be upon you, afiyat salamat be upon you, wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Now that type of dua you can't necessarily make for someone who's denying the existence of Allah.
But you can, in general sense, you can not just make dua, for example, Allah bless you.
Yes, you can say, may Allah give you good, may Allah guide you, may Allah bless you. You can use, it depends what you mean by bless, you see, because what you've got to use is what you mean by it, see, because bless seems to suggest that whatever situation you are in, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept that, or give you blessing because of that. Yeah, if that's your intention, then that's fine. There's no harm in that. There's no harm in that. You can make dua. You can make a worldly dua for a non-Muslim.
Living non-Muslim person, you can dua for.
Yes.
Non-Muslim who's passed away, he's gone.
Yes, he's gone. That's it. But somebody who's alive, you can make a worldly dua for them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you strength. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you wisdom, whatever, if a non-Muslim wants to benefit the person. Nothing. Okay, so I'm assuming, mashallah, that there's no questions coming through. So what we'll do is we'll stop there. We will now, each of us, inshallah, will do some private ibadah, and then you'll hear the adhan to break the fast, inshallah. And then we'll pray Maghrib, and then I'm sure we'll decide what to do after we've prayed Maghrib. We could possibly eat, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.